A winter of discontent is not on the cards, insists the government, saying the UK will cope with energy shortages. High gas prices has forced some providers to go bust, with families facing higher bills next month. But it's a hike that many can ill afford.
I find that's really hard because you haven't got enough money for the food or the gas and the electric. What do you do? Food or gas and electric?
Also tonight, as two children, their mum and another child are found dead, the family tell us of their heartbreak. The travel ban's lifted to the States from November as the US reopens to those who are vaccinated. And
Michaela
Cole's historic win for black women at the Emmys on a night dominated by British TV talent.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The Business Secretary has pledged there's no risk of the lights going out this winter, despite a major crisis of escalating energy costs. A surge in the price of gas has already led to the collapse of some smaller suppliers. There are fears tonight that more could still fall. Industry figures blame a government price cap, which they say is unsustainable. But rising bills will come as a devastating blow for many households already struggling to make ends meet. Here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
Autumn is fast approaching, which means soon we'll all be wrapped up and ready to whack the heaters on when we're at home. But gas prices are rising significantly and some energy suppliers are struggling, which could have big consequences for us all. The government held crisis talks with industry bosses today about what needs to be done.
Primary consideration is for the customer. The government will not be bailing out failed companies. There will be no rewards for failure or mismanagement. The taxpayer should not be expected to prop up companies which have poor business models.
There has been a surge in wholesale gas prices, rising 250% since January, with a 70% rise since August alone. Energy price caps mean suppliers can't pass this on to the consumer. And as a result, this month 4 energy companies have collapsed and another, Bulb, is now looking for a bailout. The government has confirmed the energy price cap for consumers will stay in place and it is considering offering companies emergency loans. If the supplier you use goes bankrupt, you'll automatically be moved to another company, but it might cost you more.
Families are facing a triple whammy: rising energy prices, national insurance rises, and at the end of this month, the £1,000 cut in universal credit.
Maggie Armson, a single parent on universal credit, is already regularly watching her smart meter. With the cost of living rising, any hike in her energy bills could be devastating.
It usually makes me upset and burst out crying usually if I can't pay a bill. Like putting everything else up, while they're putting the gas, electric up, with the food as well going up, and taking away universal credit.
Gas prices have been rising for several reasons. A cold winter in Europe has left stocks of gas lower than usual. There's been high demand in Asia, and there's been outages at some nuclear stations. The boss of one of the largest energy companies in the country says they've been planning for this for a while.
If your energy supplier is one of those that, isn't as prudently run and ends up folding in this process, your supply won't be interrupted. Companies like Octopus buy their energy long in advance, so we're largely insulated from any business impact.
Millions are already facing a 12% rise in their energy bills from October when a higher price cap comes in, and the government will hope that this situation is handled so that isn't made any worse. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
The crisis is affecting many different industries and is having a particularly worrying impact on farming. Production of fertiliser, which is made using natural gas, has been reduced because of rising costs. That also means there's a shortage of carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct of fertiliser. And CO2 is vital for livestock farmers who are now warning we could see shortages of meat, as our business editor Joel Hills now explains.
On this farm in Yorkshire, pigs are in places they shouldn't be. This herd was due to go to the abattoir weeks ago. It's now being kept in a cattle shed. Abattoirs have cut the number of animals they slaughter due to a shortage of labour. Livestock is becoming stranded on farms, leaving farmers feeding pigs that are rapidly losing value.
If your business is losing money and you're having to lay people off, it's, you know, when you lie in bed on a night and you can't sleep, it's a crisis.
You can't sleep at night at the moment? You seem very emotional. The situation here may be about to get worse. CO2 is used to stun pigs before they're slaughtered. If abattoirs run out of CO2, they will cut production further, and the backlog here will get even bigger.
CF Industries supplies almost 2/3 of all the CO2 the UK uses from fertiliser factories in Cheshire and Teesside. The company closed both last week because a surge in the price of natural gas made them loss-making. The National Pig Association says some abattoirs will run out of carbon dioxide by Friday.
If this CO2 shortage isn't resolved very quickly, we will be a couple of weeks away from being forced to cull perfectly healthy animals on farm and throw the carcasses in the bin.
Carbon dioxide's used to produce meat and fizzy drinks. Supermarkets also use it to keep packaged salads fresh. The boss of Iceland says we are days or weeks away from gaps on the shelves, which already have plenty of gaps thanks to a shortage of lorry drivers.
We think there's still a few days for the government to get it right and to sort this out, but they've got to do two things. They've got to get carbon dioxide back available for everybody, and they've got to prioritise the food production industry.
Tonight, the business secretary is meeting the chief executive of CF Industries to try to find a way of restarting CO2 production. Farmers, meanwhile, have a problem they can do nothing about except wait and hope. Joel Hills, ITV News in Yorkshire.
Let's talk to our political editor, Robert Peston, who's over at Westminster. Robert, the government insists it will protect consumers, but is it likely energy prices will still go up?
Yeah, they certainly will. I'm just going to concentrate on that energy price issue because it's quite clear that the government is going to bail out that fertiliser business. It'll be expensive, and CO2 production will resume helping food production. I mean, when it comes to the prices we pay for energy, the business secretary said two things that are going to be very expensive. He said he's going to protect consumers, and he says the price cap is going to stay in place. He also said he's going to allow failing businesses to go under. Now, what does that mean? If he is going to protect consumers and keep the price cap, when those businesses go bust, they've got to be transferred either to a special administrator or to other companies, but they are intrinsically loss-making, those customers, because they are paying prices well below the current market price and well below the cap that is going up in just a few weeks' time. So the government, to protect the prices those people are paying, is going to have to pay hundreds of millions of pounds of subsidies over the next few months. Now, a new price cap will come in next year. That will reflect the prices in the wholesale markets that we are currently seeing. They are way higher than they were in June. So yes, prices are going to go up for all of us very significantly next year, at a time when all sorts of other prices are going up, when universal credit is also being cut by £1,000 a year. This feels like a dramatic assault on our living standards.
OK, Robert, thanks very much. Well, for more details about how the gas crisis may affect your bills and tips on what to do if your provider goes bust, do head to our website. That's itv.com/news. A father has described his heart being broken into a million pieces after his two children, their mother and another child were found dead. Police made the tragic discovery at a house in Killamarsh near Sheffield yesterday. They've arrested a local man on suspicion of murder. Today, the grieving grandparents of the siblings spoke to ITV News about their devastation, as Ben Chapman now reports.
Go on, then. John Paul Bennett, described by his father today as his mini-me.
Yep, I want to go up the steps.
Sharing these videos online, he called his daughter Lacey the apple of his eye. Jason Bennett drove home from a holiday in Devon this morning to learn that both his children had been murdered over the weekend. He came to the street where police had found them among 4 people killed in a house. He was broken, he said, and just wanted to kiss his babies. Their paternal grandparents were among the many people leaving flowers today and who, despite their grief, wanted to pay tribute.
He was well-mannered, they always remembered the manners, they always please and thank you. If you ever brought him a present, the first thing they did was go on Facebook and thank you. I don't know how we're going to manage without him.
No. When officers arrived here yesterday morning, they also found the bodies of the children's mother, Terry Harris, and that of Lacey's friend, 11-year-old Connie Gent, who was only there for a Saturday night sleepover. Police confirmed they arrested a 31-year-old man at the scene on suspicion of murder.
Whilst understandably worrying and upsetting, this is believed to be an isolated incident in which those involved were known to one another and nobody else is being sought.
Such a senseless loss. Well, the overwhelming feeling here today, I would say, has been one of total shock and disbelief. And there is a vigil taking place, actually, just the other side of a house in a park where people are coming together to show support for one another, but also for the families involved, not least that of Connie Gent, who was simply dropped off for a sleepover with a friend on Saturday night. Her father, writing online tonight, said that he has to live with the fact that he was helpless to protect her, as he'd always promised. The police haven't given any more details yet about how the 4 victims died, or indeed why.
Okay, Ben, thank you. A climate campaigner remains in hospital with serious injuries after a paragliding accident in Scotland, which killed a member of her support team. Sasha Dench had been attempting to fly round the coast of the UK to raise awareness of climate change, but was involved in a crash over the Western Highlands on Saturday. Dan Burton, who was flying in support of Miss Dench, died as a result of the accident. Fully vaccinated UK travellers will be allowed into America from November. It ends a ban that's been in place since March last year. Whilst US correspondent Emma Murphy is in New York's Times Square for us. Emma, so British tourists will be allowed back there soon?
Yes, they'll be very glad to see the British tourists back with the money they spend. About 3 million come to this country every year, and that's quite a big boost for the economy. And for the last 18 months, nobody has been able to cross the US border if they'd come from the UK and parts of the EU and other parts of the world. Now, it's not just holidaymakers that will see the big difference here, because there are a large number of people who've made the US their home, and over the last 18 months they've had to endure this closed border. They've seen children born, family members become ill and die and not be able to leave this country because they wouldn't be able to get back in. So it is a very big moment and something that's been highly anticipated for a number of months, especially as America's COVID rates have got higher than the UK's. There didn't seem to be any point in having those restrictions in place. I know the British ambassador was lobbying on Friday, and this announcement seems to have come slightly earlier than everybody expected. There are quite a few things still to be ironed out. We don't know exactly what the situation will be in terms of children and vaccinations, but we know that children under the age of 12 will not need to be vaccinated. Also, the AstraZeneca jab will be accepted here because it's part of the World Health Organization's list of approved vaccinations.
OK, Emma, thank you. Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Vaccines at school as the first 12 to 15-year-olds receive the COVID jab, and
Olivia Colman, The Crown.
British stars reigning at the Emmys. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The Prime Minister has told world leaders that they must do more to tackle climate change. During a meeting at the UN in New York, Boris Johnson said there's still a big gap between what industrialised nations have promised and what they've delivered. And he piled pressure on wealthy nations to meet a funding pledge ahead of November's COP26 conference in Glasgow. From the summit, here's our political correspondent, Romney Weeks.
The Prime Minister left behind the energy crisis in the UK, but flew into no less difficult territory. His first major overseas trip since the start of the pandemic, and top of his list, trying to galvanise other world leaders to stump up promised cash to help developing nations deal with climate change. At a UN round table, his tone was almost angry.
I talk about the need, if this is to be a success, for developed nations to find $100 billion. And everybody always agrees that something must be done.
With just over 40 days to the critical COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, Boris Johnson told other world leaders history will judge those who failed to step up.
I think that Glasgow COP26 is a turning point for the world, and it's the moment when we have to grow up and take our responsibilities. I think we go through, a period of glorious indifference about the world. We've been through that. We've been through our childhood, if you like. We now got to realise that this is a problem that requires grit.
The Prime Minister will address the UN here on Wednesday, but it's these meetings on the fringes where the hard diplomatic graft is done. The fear is that it's all coming a bit late. If COP26 is to be a success, the Prime Minister will have to return from here with tangible commitments on carbon cutting and cash. And from his American hosts, at least, there was this significant movement on the money.
Yeah, I think we're going to get it done by COP, sure.
Thank you,
and the United States will do its part.
Nice to see you.
Progress, certainly, but the Prime Minister also has to persuade leaders like President Bolsonaro of Brazil here, and also Russia, China, India and others to commit to tougher carbon-cutting targets. At the end of the hottest summer in US history, the wildfires raging across Northern California, a reminder of the high cost we will all pay if he fails. Romilly Weeks, ITV News in New York.
6 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire at a Russian university. Officials said the attacker was a student at Perm State University who was shot by police before being arrested. 28 people were also hurt during the attack. And around 5,000 people have had to leave their homes after a volcanic eruption on Spain's Canary Islands. The volcano on La Palma has erupted for the first time in 50 years. Children aged between 12 and 15 began receiving their first dose of the coronavirus vaccine today. 3 million youngsters across all 4 home nations will be offered it in the coming weeks. And while some parents are hesitant, the children first in line today were happy to come forward, as Rebecca Barry now reports.
This is the arm I'm going to be using, right?
14-year-old Jack Lane from Leigh-on-Sea in Essex was among the very first.
There you are, all done.
It was okay. I'm happy I've got it because it makes it easier to go out and enjoy myself now.
As this morning, 12 to 15-year-olds began receiving the coronavirus vaccine. In England, it's mainly being given in schools, just like the flu immunisation programme. And for 15-year-old Quinn, it's about protecting others.
Well done.
I was pretty nervous at first, but once I've got it done, it was all good. And I'm glad that I've done it. I've got grandparents. I'd love to be safe around them and spend time with them and be safe.
While for his mum, the priority's protecting his education.
I just want him to get on with his schooling. He's in a really important year, so for me it was a bit of a no-brainer.
In Scotland, 12 to 15-year-olds can now get it at drop-in clinics like this one in Tayside. In Wales, the rollout also starts this week, and in Northern Ireland, it's expected next month. But some parents, like Terry, who has a 14-year-old daughter, are still hesitant.
I won't be giving consent for my daughter to have the vaccine, not as of yet, until we're sure of exactly what is going to happen and any problems later on down the line. So, no, she won't be having it.
Parental consent won't be needed if a child's considered competent to make the decision themselves, but health bosses want to reassure.
And we're doing it because it is our best chance, not just to protect children, but to protect families as well as we head into winter. So if people have concerns, please read the available material.
Parents in England will receive consent letters and information with the hope all 3 million eligible children will be jabbed by October half-term. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Princess Beatrice has thanked midwives after the safe arrival of her baby daughter. It's the first child born to the Queen's granddaughter, who married husband Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi in July last year. The couple said they were delighted after the little one arrived weighing £6 and 2 ounces. Congrats to them both. And from real life royalty to their TV characterisation, as the Netflix series The Crown took the top drama prize at last night's Emmys. 4 of its stars, including Olivia Colman, won the individual gongs. And there was also a big historic win for Michaela Coel, but that did not disguise a lack of diversity among the recipients. Our arts editor Nina Nanar rounds up the night's winners.
It wasn't quite business as usual. Some British nominees watched proceedings from London, while in LA, an event billed as being outdoors was actually in a marquee, which drew some comment.
There is way too many of us in this little room. What are we doing?
Kate Winslet. British talent does well at the Emmys. This year was no exception. Kate Winslet winning a Best Actress award.
I just want to acknowledge my fellow nominees in this decade that has to be about women having each other's backs. I support you. I salute you. I'm proud of all of you.
Olivia Colman, The Crown.
This was the year that streaming services triumphed. The Crown helping Netflix to a record haul, streamers winning all 3 major series awards.
Your Majesty.
Gillian Anderson, who played Margaret Thatcher in The Crown, got a Best Supporting Actress gong. And for Best Actress Olivia Colman, whose stint playing the Queen has now finished, it was an emotional evening.
I'm going to be very quick because I'm very teary. I wish my dad was here to see this. So, I lost my daddy during COVID and he would have loved all of this.
There were milestone wins for women directors, but familiar criticism over the lack of non-white winners. Diversity very much evident in the award givers, but not the receivers.
I'm going to smoke it.
We're not smokers.
Leave the vape.
But what a night for Michaela Coel. She did win, becoming the first black woman to triumph in her writing category for a drama loosely based on her own experiences and dealing with issues of consent.
Write the tale that scares you, that makes you feel uncertain, that isn't comfortable. I dare you. I dedicate this story to every single survivor of sexual assault. Thank you.
From the Queen's Gambit to the Queen, UK stars had much to celebrate. Talent from over here, clearly much appreciated over there. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
So proud of Michaela. OK, that's it from us for now. Julie will be here with news at 10. But for me and the whole of the evening news team, you enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.